The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
When a late-night comedian decides to absolutely obliterate a political figure on live television, you know something serious is about to go down. What you're about to discover isn't just another political roast. It's a systematic breakdown of controversies, lies, and bizarre behavior that turned one man into comedy gold. Right off the bat, we're seeing the tone that would define this entire takedown. But this wasn't just random comedy. Greg Gutfeld had ammunition, and he was about to use every single piece of it.
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
There's Tim Walz delivering what sounds like standard political talking points, but Gutfeld wasn't buying it for a second.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month. Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
The setup was complete. What came next would expose a pattern of questionable decisions and outright deception that stretched back decades. The first major bombshell centered around something that should have been sacred: military service. When accusations of stolen valor surfaced, they didn't just question Walz's honesty, they questioned everything.
Exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, 0.2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
The pattern was becoming clear. This wasn't just about one mistake. It was about a decades-long habit of avoiding responsibility and rewriting history. But if you thought the controversies ended there, you haven't seen anything yet. The really strange stuff started becoming apparent when people began noticing Walz's behavior in public settings. There was something off about his interactions, his responses, his entire demeanor that made even political allies uncomfortable.
He's a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
Even Trump noticed something was off. The story he tells about Walz calling for help during civil unrest reveals a man who seemed completely out of his depth when faced with real pressure.
Now, he's a strange guy.
Strange.
He called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, "My house is being surrounded by people with American flags." I said, "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" He said, "I think they're going to attack me." This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. They like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, "How do you know?" There were about 15,000, he said, "Could you put out a word like that I'm your friend?" I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement. He's a good man, the governor. He's on our side. I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
Think about that for a moment. A governor so panicked by American flags that he called someone he didn't even know for help. But the strange behavior didn't stop there. It actually got weirder. While Walz was making increasingly bizarre public statements, he was also making some pretty serious accusations that immediately backfired when people actually looked at the details.
Just recently, Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
The math problems line perfectly captured how absurd some of these claims had become, but Walz wasn't done making statements that would come back to haunt him.
Especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the
self-awareness was completely absent, but when pressed for details on any of his statements, things got even more embarrassing.
Walz lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every.
Those wide eyes weren't showing passion. They were showing panic, the look of someone who knew they were in over their head. The confusion reached peak levels when Walz attempted to discuss international affairs.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!" It's no wonder they don't do follow-up questions with Democrats. They're like the top layer of day-old skimpy bean dip. What's underneath? You don't want to see.
The metaphor was perfect. Scratch the surface even slightly, and the incoherence became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Walz was making statements that seemed designed to escalate tensions rather than calm them.
Tim Walz vomits more nonsense.
I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Maybe it's an adult like Donald Trump, you bully the shit out of him back. This is a weak, cruel man that takes it out and punches down on people.
Wow. Oh. Jamie.
What a
Painful,
douchebag,
huh?
Greg. That was absolutely painful. He was the keynote speaker at this conference. Can you imagine having to watch more of that?
By this point, even people within his own party were starting to notice that something was seriously wrong.
So the tone of the media was one of sadness, not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
The colonoscopy comparison was brutal but accurate. Watching Walz try to handle serious questions had become genuinely uncomfortable for everyone involved, but perhaps the most telling assessment came from multiple commentators who saw the same thing.
But Kamala can't speak, he can't speak, Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show, and I said this in the pod. He's a clown without a circus. He's
Doesn't
just
even need
roaming.
makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for? Yeah. I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months from.
The final assessment was devastating. A political figure who had become so detached from reality that he'd transformed into unintentional comedy. But there was one more moment that perfectly captured just how awkward things had become.
Hey, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird. I've seen warmer embraces between Chris Christie and a salad. Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain? I don't see that as a problem, said one woman.
Even his most intimate relationship seems stilted and performative. What we've witnessed here isn't just political commentary, it's a complete psychological profile delivered through comedy, from military service questions to drunk driving cover-ups, from bizarre public statements to awkward personal interactions. The pattern that emerged was of someone fundamentally uncomfortable with truth and authenticity. Greg Gutfeld didn't just roast Tim Walz, he performed a systematic autopsy of a political career built on questionable foundations. Every joke landed because it was rooted in documented behavior that people could see for themselves. Sometimes the most effective analysis doesn't come from serious political debates or academic discussions. Sometimes it comes from comedians willing to point out what everyone else can see but nobody wants to say out loud. In this case, that truth was simple. When you build a public persona on shaky ground, eventually someone's going to come along with a spotlight and show everyone exactly what's underneath.